Hello and welcome to the Disabled People's channel. Today I'm here with Conor. Introduce yourself to people.
It's professionally a comedy storyteller, works in theatre, background in the arts of some description or another for about 20 years.
You've recently done a play.
It started off really small. It started off here in this living room. Originally, I made the decision to stop performing and stop writing, and for a few years that was I did nothing apart from be a very healthy person, did meditation, and I slowly brought bits of art back into my life in very small little packages. The reality with me is things like fibro will hit sometimes in the first 30 seconds of a show. Yeah, the name of the show is Learn to Swim on an Ironing Board. It's a nice little metaphor for the show in terms of kind of learning to live with a chronic health condition. So the show in one part is a sort of lecture performance about therapeutic eavesdropping.
I was struck down with fibromyalgia! I always find it best if you introduce your long-term chronic health conditions like you're introducing an American wrestler. Breaks that palpable tension that occurs when you say the name of your illness and it has just too many syllables to be anything other than shite and possibly contagious. Anyone fancy a hug? It's a 50-50, but you can't phone a friend.
Kind of what I learned from watching people in shopping centres, the eavesdropping kind of mirrors the journey that you might have with a chronic health condition, where in the very initial phases you might look to your family for support and love, and then you kind of move on to relationships, and then eventually you move back to yourself and kind of working through yourself. So yeah, the show was an amalgamation of the Overheard and the Arndale, and an attempt to try and make the audience comfortable with the fact that it was an unreliable performer. And to do that, I had to give them little bits of information about fibromyalgia. When that happened, the whole therapy angle came in as well. And I tried to talk about how therapy had affected and improved my life. So it was quite an interesting, ridiculously long process of about 8 years, from the original idea to getting it into a theatre, and then pandemic and the theatres closed. So the tour that we had scheduled has been, we've kind of put it to the side, and we're thinking about bringing it back in the living room and having a kind of Zoom based theatre experience for people.
I've seen it, but it's only because it has gone from being your nice living room kind of set and everything. It's been a beauty that you've been able to put it out there, but I can see how.
Oh, no, we're talking about getting it live back in the living room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were really lucky. The recording that we got from the first show at home was just beautiful, and it's a good enough quality where I kind of feel happy about letting people see it. So I think the Disabled Channel and Fibromyalgia UK and a couple of other people joined in and cross-posting that live stream, and the quality was good enough to put out there, which I was really happy about.
Yeah,
because that was my first 1 hour theatre-based show, and normally if you've got a shaky steady cam shot from the back of the room, that's about as much as you'd normally get, where we got this like broadcast quality.
You've obviously kind of explained how the fibromyalgia made an impact on kind of creating the show and how to do that.
Yeah.
How does that change the way that you do the show? Because I know often people do a run of them in 4 or 5 nights.
Oh, that's never going to happen with me. I think the main effect on stage is the fibro fog and just forgetting it. I hadn't really considered how bad it might be. And ended up having to hand the script over to audience members and hope that they could follow my weird logic and the text. And it worked quite nicely. It was a lot of fun. And it made a kind of community thing, because some people would just hand it on and different audience member would take it. And when we brought it into a theatre, we had to get a professional, because I'm not allowed to shout with the public.
Yeah, really did notice the impact of the fibro fog at points, because you did have to refer to the person who was with the script. And
Hannah, she gets shouted at a lot,
but
mainly because of my forgetfulness.
But it's good that you were able to kind of incorporate that and explain it.
Yeah, and I think it's that thing of like, if I was in a repertory theatre or the Royal Shakespeare Company, they wouldn't tolerate that sort of behaviour.
Yeah, before you kind of got ill and got diagnosed and things, you were presumably memorising masses of script and able to do performances and things like that. And
there's somewhere in my head, there's like a 45-minute poetry set that still exists. And some sort of memory gets locked in, and then fibro fog just seems to, it shuts the door more than anything. It's not so much that the thing has been forgotten, it's that the room I needed to get in to get at it is no longer open to me. And then just having the prompt to be able to go, sometimes it's just one word and I know exactly how to get back in, but until that word's given to me, it's lost.
The way that I try and explain it, because I've seen it in a few different conditions, is that it seems like the brain's putting so much power in to try to cope with whatever the difficulty is that you've got, that it just doesn't have the simple brain power to remember or recall and do just simple functions.
I think for me, the simplest is just that my brain shuts down and its ability to do stuff gets changed. So the way to deal with it for me was to hire somebody to wrangle my mind, basically, when I lost control of it.
So it sounds like it should be very frustrating, but
yeah, I think once we kind of went, actually, these are the realities of how I perform and what I need, we were able to go, let's incorporate this in, let it be part of the story, let it reveal some of the truths about living with a chronic health condition. Was to expose those things, but to let it be exposed if it shows up. If it didn't show up, it didn't make too much of a difference. But when it does, by being able to talk to the audience about it, we were able to get the audience on side. So every time it happened, it didn't feel like this huge interruption to the show. I actually did the show once to all the medical staff at the pain clinic in Manchester, which is really weird. There was literally 4 psychologists in the front row. And at the end, they had questions about whether they couldn't figure out what was real and what wasn't real about the memory loss. I basically, that time I had my physiotherapist as my prompt for that show. It was really very strange, especially as it was performed in a functioning hospital ward.
Yeah, that must be really good to have the opportunity to, it
was lovely to talk to them properly,
too often people are kind of complaining that the doctors and the specialists don't really understand us. So, being able to actually give them your experience sounds brilliant.
I think we've been pretty lucky with, I've been able to spend time with one of the professors and with my physio and been able to kind of talk about the condition down the road. Because I think quite often what they're dealing with is people in the very early stages, or people are in acute phases of pain, and to be able to kind of chat to them as a long-term patient. I think the conversations we were able to have were conversations they don't often get to have.
Yeah, and I guess that you've also spent many years of your life trying to be articulate. So actually being able to put into words what the rest of us can't necessarily articulate is really helpful.
The general public, their understanding of illness is the process is often you get ill, you go to the doctor, you get better. Whereas with a chronic condition, you get on well, and you just stay that way. And that's a very different process that it's hard for them to understand, to get them back to kind of thinking about it in a longer term model. I found that quite hard to do. So I think the show was a good way of pushing myself to try and create a good dialogue. No, I love having stuff jammed into my face, but there's times when like it's fatigue or fibro fog, and I can barely handle the sound of my own breathing. That's one of the things that can be hard to explain to people is this sort of in and out kind of thing, where symptoms have this much impact and then another day they have this much impact. Like, I think we were meant to meet the other week, and I simply knew I didn't have the cognitive strength to do like a proper chat interview. And there's a bit of that, you know, oh, that's horrible, but it's just part of my life. And in most cases, I have pretty good relationships with people where they have a rough idea what's going on, and if I cancel or I pull out, they know it's not me shirking off or trying to run away from responsibilities.
That's really good, because obviously, especially the early days, it can be very difficult to feel like you're shutting everyone else out, and the guilt can kind of really ramp up and things. So
we don't always give ourselves proper allowances to be ill or to be people with conditions, and we expect these things from us, and we should be able to do this, we should be able to do that, when in reality we need to be more creative about how we think of doing things. Improvising was a lovely get out of jail free card for me, because I just had to rely on my brain to work in those moments, and it generally did. And it meant I didn't have to learn scripts. You can develop the skills to be a good improviser. They just, I spend a lot of time trying to work on that as a performer. Once you let go of shame, it's really easy. The changes that people have made in terms of working from home or using social media or online presences to maintain and sustain friendships or for activities. And I think if after this period we don't hold on to those things as a society, we're kind of spitting in the face of the disabled community, because these were the things we have asked for years.
Terry had a much harder job getting me to see that living with an invisible disability was part of the story, because fibromyalgia as a narrative device is pants. There's no backstory, there's no concrete arc, and there's no triumphant conclusion. There's just this cycle. I'm having a bad day. It's because of the fibromyalgia. I did a small bit of a huge thing. Yay me! Go team! Con! Ow! I'm in pain. It's because of the small thing. I had a wash. Yay me! Self-care. Go team. I'm tired. It's because of the fib. Oh, they're pretty flowers. Positive thinking. Yay me. Go. I'm having a medically approved day off. Yay me. Self-care. Now, I live that life joyfully because it's the best life I can lead. But I can find it a bit tedious at times. So I can only imagine what an audience would make of it. Like, seriously, think of all the people you've unfollowed on Facebook or Twitter because they're just too repetitively moany and dull. Do not give me that look. Statistically speaking, you're sat within 5 seats of someone you've done it to.
In the process of creating the show, I realized I couldn't perform like I used to. Predominantly things like fibro fog and kind of cognitive issues would show up. In the initial version of the show, it was only ever meant to happen in my living room or in the living room of people with chronic health conditions. Because that way I was able to control everything. I didn't have to work to a deadline. I could take my time to figure out stuff. And in the very early versions of the show, I would give an audience member the script and they would become my unofficial prompt. But now that we've gone into theaters, we've got a real prompt. They sort of help me deal with the fibro fog. It's a show about therapeutic eavesdropping, and it deserves air quotes because, you know, he made it up. It's about the lived experience of fibromyalgia rather than a show about the symptoms and the cures and all of that. That might be the next show. Because I think when people see you do stuff, like I quite often will twitch. I have a very weird sound that I sometimes make that I pretend I'm a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And it's just this weird yawn where I can't get proper energy in. I just, like that. And if I ever do that in front of people, it means I'm very comfortable with them. So yeah, I think there was that thing for me as a performer was I felt like I had to legitimize my presence on stage. And I had to make the audience comfortable with something that I was actually comfortable with. And I didn't mind them seeing the fibromyalgia or the effects of it that happened live on stage, but they did need to be brought along.
Yeah.
And I think that's really nice because people invested in that.
Yeah, it was nice that you kind of introduced it. You kind of introduced it in lots of little bits rather than just giving a whole overload at the beginning. One of the bits that I did kind of really appreciate was early on when you explain the way that some of your overheads give that mixed reaction.
I'm sorry, now that I've had a look at you, you look like good-ish people. Kind of people, when you hear or see something tragic, you don't go, "Ha ha! The lad, he fell down." You have one of those nice emotions, like empathy. But the thing is, from doing this show, I've come to realise empathy and laughter don't mix. If you've ever been on a mindfulness course, you'll know exactly what I mean. And there will be moments in this show that might make you go, "Aw," but just to make life hard on myself, I've also put punchlines in there. And what will happen inside, empathy and laughter will have this little fight, and empathy will win because love wins out. And all that'll happen is you want to give me a hug, and I'll feel genuinely confused by that sort of affection.
I kind of talked about empathy, and I kind of... I didn't... It would be very easy for an audience to kind of have very, and just sort of want to give you a hug. But just the kind of slightly nature of my comedy in my head, it also sometimes makes people feel like, should we get somebody in to help him? You know, I do want to laugh, but I feel concerned.
You gave people permission to laugh at fibro fog or whatever else was going on, and I think
that kind of softens it further.
Pull people with you. Yeah,
I think if I didn't do that, I think the performance would elicit more. I don't know if empathy is the right word so much as maybe sympathy. But yeah, that was always something I've been kind of aware as a performer. I can be a bit much, and sometimes you need to bring people along to kind of know that that bit much isn't some sort of uncontrolled weirdo on stage. There is some thought processes behind it.
I guess a lot of that comes through you learning about yourself and how to really understand yourself.
I don't think I could have written that show if I hadn't figured out ways for me as to be comfortable on stage as a performer, performing in the way my body works. And I think the process that got me to there was quite involved, and it did take a lot of kind of very hard in the background work on myself and my life. And I think when I had all that stabilized, it was much easier for me to go back on stage and talk to people and let people see things. Because I used to get angry about feeling like you'd let down people if your body hasn't worked right or if you haven't turned up. And I'm not so egotistical as to not think the audience deserves something good from me. So I think once I was able to control my fibromyalgia and understand it well enough, I was able to bring that understanding on stage. Admittedly, one of my main tricks to achieving my goals is never have a deadline. And it's finished when it's finished.
From me, there's a massive thank you. And
it's my pleasure, mate.
From everyone else we're able to show this to, thank you. It's been very informative, very useful, cool. And I hope that you can get out doing your new show or this show or
I'll get out in front of an audience somehow.
A difficult question in there, but yes,
it is.
You're like a wise old owl.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm so used to not looking at him. It's quite strange to look him right in the eyes.
I can't believe that I didn't see the owl in the first bit.
He's always hiding the